The request is that Government New Clause 15 be read a second time. Shadow Minister Greatrex.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now, I have to say to the House at the very outset, if people, members of this House and those who are watching these proceedings, were short of confidence in the government on this before we started this debate, after having witnessed the last hour or so, they will be even more bereft of confidence, because what we appear to have had is the Minister seeking to amend an amendment which hasn't been put in front of us on protection for areas. What she seems to have said is that she has sent a letter, or indeed her ministerial colleague has sent a letter, which none of the members of the committee who supposedly have not actually received that letter, and I'm looking round to see if any of the members who served on the committee who are in the chamber today can confirm they've received that letter. And finally we appear to have received, in a moment, we appear to have received a mixture of a commitment from the Minister that she will accept New Clause 19, but then goes on to say that she disagrees with elements of New Clause 19. I make this absolutely plain to the House this afternoon that our New Clause 19, it's all or nothing. It's not cherry-picking that amendment, because it needs all of those conditions in place before we can be absolutely confident that this can happen, that any shale extraction can happen, and it should be stopped until all of those points are in place. Now, I will indeed.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman. I actually wasn't on the committee, as he will be aware. But if it's any reassurance to him, certainly late last week, I did receive a letter from my right honourable friend, the Minister, about the infrastructure bill. And as it was a letter that was sent to all MPs, I assume that most of them, if they look at their emails carefully, will have got it as well.
Well, of course, the Minister from, the member from Chelmsford will be very well aware that his honourable friend the Minister is a prodigious correspondent. We get plenty of letters from him, but this is about a very specific point that my honourable friend from Ellesmere Port and Neston made, a point that was raised in committee, a point that is relevant to his amendment, and I do not see any members of the committee here, and I've checked my own inbox, that have received that letter. Now, if we haven't received that letter, how can we take the Minister at her word and the Government at their word, and that what we've seen this afternoon so far is an absolute shambles? They have not got a clue what they're doing, and it's left us in a position where this bill, and this part of this bill, which has created a huge amount of attention, which many people are here because they wish to speak on, which many people across all sides of the House, and it isn't particularly party political, have got concerns, have tabled amendments, are not clear about what it is that the Government and the Minister is saying this afternoon. I have to say that I feel sorry for her having been put in this position by her ministerial colleagues, who are good at giving the quotes to the Sun about this issue, but seem to shy away from taking part in any of these discussions. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I will give way to my honourable friend.
I'm most grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, but doesn't he agree with me that given that the Minister said that she commented on every single amendment that had been put forward from all sides of the House, we're still in a state of really not understanding how we can even raise the point in Parliament, never mind come to vote on them, because we just aren't going to have a chance to speak to the amendments that are down.
I thank my honourable friend, and she makes an important point, because we are here to scrutinise this bill. We are here at this stage of this bill, after debate in committee, with a whole stream of amendments on a range of different issues to do with this issue. We know that we asked for 2 days and we got one, and we've had, because of the way this has gone, a very short period of time to try and deal with these issues, and it makes it very difficult indeed for us to be, as a House collectively, to be able to make a judgment on these issues. And I think that is actually an indication of a dereliction of duty on behalf of the Government in bringing this bill before us this afternoon.
I'm extremely grateful to the honourable friend, and I've no desire, Mr Deputy Speaker, to embarrass him. I regard him almost as a protégé, so I would never want to do that. I would never want to do that. I would never want to do that. But I have to tell him the letter in question that he claims he hasn't received, dated the 20th January, was sent by me on the specific issue raised by the honourable gentleman of Ellesmere Port and Heston, and by the way, was addressed to, let me have a look, the Right Honourable Andrew Miller MP, and says at the bottom of it, I trust this response to your question. I'm copying it to the letter to the Chair and members of the Public Bill Committee. So I think there must have been some misunderstanding on the part of the honourable gentleman. As I know he's a decent, honourable man, I take it that matters there closed.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint the Minister being anointed as his protégé, as I seem to have just done, which will have done me no good at all. But that my honourable friend who has moved this amendment can't find having had receipt of that letter, then then it makes it very difficult for us to be able to deal with these issues. But I will return to my wider point, which is what we had from the Minister just now in relation to the point about protection for certain areas. So in a moment, hang on, I will just deal with this point. Protection of areas, which is something which the Honourable Member for Thirsk and Moulton, the Right Honourable Member for Uxbridge and South Ruislip and others have raised in amendments to this bill. We seem to have a suggestion that actually the exception which is in the legislation was going to be removed, but no indication about how that was going to be removed, given that this bill has been through the Lords and we are at the final stage of its consideration. I will indeed.
Gentlemen therefore agree that the Right Honourable Gentleman of Ellesmere Port has first of all wasted 40 minutes of his time, and secondly is dilatory in reading his Bill Committee letters.
Well, I'm sure that the Right Honourable Member, who himself has tabled amendments for this part of this bill, would be much more confident in the approach of the Minister. We hadn't just had a suggestion that a change was going to be made in relation to protection of areas that we haven't actually got in front of us. And how can we have any confidence if that is the approach, given that we have only or less than 40 minutes to consider this wide range of amendments in this bill?
Been very courteous in giving way, but may I appeal to him on behalf of my constituents who are worried about the substantive issues to try and leave these procedural matters behind and get on to the substantive issues that our constituents are concerned about.
Well, the Right Honourable or the Honourable Gentleman is usually a stickler for procedure, and I would have to say to him, in regard to this is about the scrutiny of this bill, and we need to have confidence in the way in which that is done in this House, and I think it ill behoves the House to have the situation which we've just experienced over the last few minutes. Mr Deputy... I will finally this last time.
Will my friend agree with me? It's also about potential applications going to be in the next month, such as Mizzen in my constituency, where the clarification or otherwise on that point may well be a fundamental issue for the planning authority and the general public in making decisions.
I thank my honourable friend. I think he makes an important point in a very cogent fashion. Mr Deputy Speaker, I am rising to support a number of new clauses and amendments tabled in my name and those of my honourable and right honourable friends. I'm very conscious of the amount of time that we have left, and so I will try to be exceptionally brief to enable others to be able to make their contributions. But I wanted to say again, Mr Deputy Speaker, that there are two fundamentals to any debate and discussion about unconventional gas extraction in the UK, and those are that hydraulic fracturing cannot be permitted to go ahead without robust regulation, comprehensive monitoring and local consent, and then it cannot come at the expense of our binding commitments on climate change. Now, members of this House will be aware that 80% of our heating demand and many industrial processes are reliant on gas. So this debate is not just about sources of electricity generation in the way in which it is sometimes portrayed. And as the Independent Committee on Climate Change have made clear, we will need gas for some time to come. The issue is about how much gas we use and whether or not that can displace imports of gas in a way which does not breach our climate commitments. That has consistently been our position, and a case I've been making on behalf of the opposition for almost 3 years. In March 2012, I set a range of regulatory principles that would need to be addressed before commencement of fracking could happen at a time when it was suspended. And since then, and in committee, as members of the committee who are here in this House this afternoon will know, we have pushed the government on those specific points. And judging by the number of amendments on the order paper today that reflect concerns and include specific suggestions which are incorporated into new clause 19, they are widespread concerns, not party political, and they're deeply held ones. It has always been and continues to be our position the stewardship of these issues requires a government to be careful, cautious and coherent in their approach, and as well as for regulatory coherence, but also to meet the higher public acceptability test and the legitimate environmental concerns which many people have, this is an issue which demands a responsible attitude from government and regulators. Now, I will give away one final time.
I'm grateful for him giving away a second time on this. I just wonder whether he's had a chance to read the Environmental Audit Subcommittee report, which we did publish today, and which really looks at the whole issue of the regulatory regime and how you actually make that compatible with the carbon budget. So I just wonder if you could say a little bit more about how we could press the pause button and make sure that the safeguards that he wants to see could actually be brought in.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I did indeed have the chance to read the report that her committee did this morning, and she explained how that was a rapid piece of work, but an important piece of work which touched on many of the issues which I have raised concern about. And within that, in the summary of the report, her committee highlighted a number of particular issues in terms of methane emissions and monitoring, in terms of nationally important areas and water protection zones, which are addressed within new clause 19. And I think her committee has done a service to the House in being able to bring those points forward for us. And I'm responding to this intervention, and I've said that I will not have time to give it away anymore because I know other members are wishing to come into this debate. And I think that those points are important. In terms of carbon budgets and in terms of meeting those carbon commitments, I would just refer to the evidence her committee got from the Committee on Climate Change about the way in which that can be done, if it's done appropriately. And she will know that we have a commitment to a 2030 decarbonisation target in terms of electricity supply, as well as maintaining carbon budgets. And it's about then how the gas that we may produce fits within those budgets. And I think that's something which we can do, provided we have the right regulatory framework and the right processes in place. But I do have to say, in respect of her Amendment 68, I do have a concern, particularly in relation to the removal of the maximising economic recovery clause, which will have a very serious impact in the North Sea, and something which I know is a very real concern to other members of the House. Now, to be fair, I did say I wasn't going to give away any more, and I'm conscious of time. New clause 1, standing in my name, which the government said they were sympathetic to, we think is very important to ensure that the reality of the way in which the permitting happens and the responsibility of the Environment Agency and clarity and coherence about that is put in place. New clause 2, the Minister touched on, and we had some exchanges on that. And can I say that it is absolutely clear from the concessions that the government made during committee stage that there will be no change to underground access rights in Scotland without the improvement and the decision being made by Scottish ministers, and I welcome that change. But I do reiterate to the Minister that it's very important that the licensing, that the 14th licensing round in relation to Scotland, those licences are not granted at a time when we're in the process of effectively devolving the licensing process for onshore as well, and think she should respond to, or she should reflect on that point. Now, the Minister in her contribution went through in detail the various sub-clauses of Amendment New Clause 19 standing in our name. Now, that new clause incorporates very many amendments tabled by other members from all sides of the House. She seemed to indicate that she would accept that amendment, but that she still disagreed with various parts of it. I'm afraid that isn't good enough, because the entirety of that amendment needs to be taken this afternoon, because what that amendment does is makes absolutely clear that there will be no shale gas exploration or extraction until those conditions are in place. It's not a pick list for her to decide which ones she likes and which ones she doesn't. It's to ensure that in legislation it's absolutely clear that those protections are in place. If that is indeed the government's case now, it proves that during the course of the committee and discussions, and previously and before and leading up to those discussions, that actually all of the contribution from the Minister and others, that they thought that the regulatory process was absolutely coherent, was correct and was comprehensive, have been demonstrated this afternoon to be entirely false. And I think that underlines the importance of us taking a responsible attitude to these issues and to making sure that those issues are properly covered, as I said, which have been reflected by very many others who have tabled amendments to this bill, including members of her own party. There are a number of other amendments which have been tabled by other honourable members. And I just have to say, in relation to the DEFRA report, I'm very disappointed in the Minister's response to that. It's so redacted that it seems that it was written by somebody called Redacted. It doesn't meet the concerns of the member, the chair of the Select Committee, from a sedentary position. His contribution so far in total to this debate from the Energy Minister suggested that that wasn't the case. I have the report in front of me, Shale Gas Rural Economy Impacts by redacted. That's how ridiculously redacted this report has become, and how little confidence we can have that the government seeks not to publish that report and to enable members of this House to look at those cumulative impacts. There are a number of amendments the member for Thirsk and Moulton has tabled on that, on mandatory EIAs, on issues around substances, all of which I agree with and we agree with, and we think there are amendments again which the Minister should properly consider, as we do with the amendments in relation to water companies and the statutory footing for community benefits tabled by the member for Arundel and South Downs and others. Mr Deputy Speaker, this is a controversial subject. There is much interest in it outside as well as inside the Chamber this afternoon. It's one aspect of a bill which contains many, many measures, some of which are supported and some of which are not. It's absolutely the role of government to not only address those concerns, but to take on board the range of issues we have already heard and will continue to hear for the next half an hour. Not from one party, but from probably every party represented here this afternoon. The focus this afternoon in this House and for the government is to listen to Parliament, to respond to the concerns, to reflect upon those and ensure that no fracking will happen until the wider confidence there needs to be applied in the regulatory framework, not partially, not with exception, not with some but not others, not in full, but completely and comprehensively is in place. For those reasons, I implore the government to accept new clause 19 in full, to not seek to cherry-pick the clauses, sub-clauses within new clause 19, and if they aren't clear about that and fail to do so, then we will indeed seek to divide the House on new clause 19 and other of our amendments subsequently this afternoon.